Hi, this is Derek Schaefer with HostCo. Today I want to take a little bit of time to talk about WordPress performance tuning. If you've got any questions about this presentation, feel free to hit me on Twitter at WPHostCo. Okay, first and foremost, we need to discuss the problem space. If I take a typical blog site like Picture.com, which is a small blog that we run, it's simple, but it does tend to go viral from time to time, and we'll talk a little bit later about the statistics that it's seen when a post goes viral on social media. But it has, at the time I took this, 57 items that look like CSS files, JavaScript files, images of different types, JPEGs, GIFs, etc. And moreover, it runs on a typical WordPress theme that will make multiple calls to the database to get various information that it needs. A typical WordPress theme will make anywhere from 10 to, depending on what plugins are configured, you could see 50 and beyond calls to the database just off of the single load of a page. Okay, well, this is where some of the problems begin. Now, I'll walk through what the various challenges are. First is that WordPress stores all content in a database. And I'm not hacking this because it's a great architecture. It makes it very portable across systems, very robust and reliable, easy to program to. It just has performance implications. That is mainly caused by the fact that WordPress is chatty. When I say chatty, I mean that every theme makes multiple calls to the database, and sometimes it does so in a redundant way. So if you have a page load 1,000 times and there's a call in that page to ask what's the name of this blog so I can put it up in the header, it's going to make that 1,000 times, which it gets really chatty when you've got multiple users online and becomes a problem. This is coupled or highlighted by the fact that the protocols of the World Wide Web are very chatty as well. The main protocol that drives the World Wide Web is something called TCP, which is a transport protocol, and it literally sets up a handshake for every connection that it makes, and we refer to it as a three-way TCP handshake. Well, for every call that you make, those setups are taking place, and there's also a teardown process as well. It's a good thing. We need to have that in place, but it does make for a lot of back and forth chatter between connections on the internet, and so that has implications on your blog as well. Last couple of things. One is Apache is a really robust web server, but sometimes it takes things way too seriously. So for example, just to load up a simple GIF file from a header, let's say, and hand that out to a browser, it sets up a pretty substantial connection requiring memory and other resources, and it really doesn't need to be that resource intensive. So that can be a problem. And last, PHP is not compiled. It's what we call interpreted code. So every time a PHP function is called, the preprocessor literally needs to go in and interpret what that says and execute it, and that takes time. So here's what the result is. The result is WordPress is great. You get a platform that runs across a variety of hosting platforms. It's accessible by just about any browser. It's easy to get up and get your blog running. It's robust. If we didn't love it, we wouldn't use it. However, when you put WordPress under pressure, high traffic from a social media spike or a hot link on a big site, what you will see are crashes of your server and connection errors, or even maybe the white screen of death. And it's literally due to the fact that once you put it under pressure, all of these problems that I list above start to weigh on the resources of your server, and they take it down. Okay, before I get into some tuning recommendations on how to fix this, let's just get on the same page about how this all works. First of all, WordPress runs on what we call a LAMP stack, and LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Now, it will run on a WAMP stack, which you replace Linux with Windows, or a Windows stack, but the preferred way to run WordPress would be on Linux. So the first couple of components, which are Apache and PHP, those literally, Apache is going to handle all your incoming browser requests, and it's going to decide what it needs to hand off to PHP so that it can process those scripts. It'll also decide what the browser needs to process in terms of client-side JavaScript and other code. It's also going to process modules such as URL rewrites or the infamous permalinks inside of WordPress and how that gets displayed back to the end browser. Apache handles session management, security management, and a whole host of other things. But that's how those two, Apache and PHP, work together on the web server. And then the database, which is MySQL, it handles storing of all configuration information for WordPress, user and security information, all the content on all posts, all pages, all revisions, references to files, plugin information. It all gets stored there. And it's responsible for serving that up as the PHP calls inside of WordPress, and the theme call on it to get that information. Okay, so the first step in performance tuning your LAMP stack or your WordPress install, for that matter, for WordPress, is to reduce the number of database calls. And thankfully, we've got some really good plugins that make this a pretty straightforward process. But let me walk you through how it works. Okay, if I take Hostco at wphost.co, we run this site on WordPress, okay? And when a user comes into that, they are going to make calls into the PHP files that make up the WordPress core install. Also, inside of those PHP files, you're going to find your theme files and all plugins that you've got installed. Those process various requests that take place, and for each request to the database, they're going to make a call back to the database to get data that they need. That data is returned to the PHP. It's put all together, combined with your theme and processed by your plugins and put back out to the in browser. So if I have 2,000 concurrent users on a single page and I'm making 30 PHP calls due to the needs of WordPress for every page load, now all of a sudden you can see how these numbers can start to get out of control, and we're really hitting this database. So what you want to do is you want to get PHP in the database out of the mix. And how you do that is there are several plugins. The one that we prefer is one called WP Super Cache. And what it does is for any given page, it will say, you know what, I know what you want, and I know what this looks like in HTML. Let me build it once. I'll store it down as a cached HTML file, and I'll just take PHP and the MySQL database out of the mix for everything that we need. And you'll watch performance go through the roof by just making this simple change to your blog. Okay, the second challenge that you have is even once you've got this down to an HTML file, if you've got 57 elements on a page like we do on Picture.com, you've still got to load all of those GIF files, process all of those scripts and CSS files. And one of the tricks that the big boys use is they will configure a front-end server or a light HTTP server that will take or offload those chores from Apache. Because remember earlier we said Apache takes things way too seriously when it comes to some of these simple calls and simple files that it needs to deliver. Now the front-end server that we prefer at Hostco is Nginx. Here's how it works. If I bring up my Apache, PHP, MySQL, and Linux stack here, okay, basically, Apache, as we described earlier, is responsible for calling PHP, and it's also responsible for processing all requests to HTML files and loading other types of elements you'll find on a web page, like GIF files and JPEG files. When we introduce Nginx into the mix, what we want to do is make Apache responsible for PHP and other script files, but all of the simpleton HTML files and GIF files and JPEG files, we're going to have this lightweight web server process those, and they never see Apache. So we see up to 80% of the load taken away from Apache and handled by Nginx in our environments at Hostco, which is a really good thing. Nginx is super fast. It's super stable and reliable. It's not very smart. I mean, all it can do are a few things, but it does them really well. Okay. So once you've got a plugin like WP Super Cache, which is going to make HTML files of your actual WordPress post or pages, and then you configure Nginx to say, okay, within those HTML files, I want to have Nginx offload some of the simple work from Apache and make my blog lightning fast, you still need to do some tuning of each service. Unfortunately, in this screencast, I can't get into details on exactly what tuning parameters we use at Hostco, but I'll give you some ideas of some things that you need to go look at. First of all, inside of Apache, you can configure how much memory Apache will use, the number of spare servers that it creates, how many requests it'll handle from a process before it kills it and restarts it, and there's a whole host of little tuning and tweaks that you can make inside of Apache to make it run more efficiently. Play with those and find out what works best for your WordPress install. Second is PHP. Memory is obviously a tweakable parameter within it, and there's also add-ons that you can put in your PHP processing that are what we call op caches, and they will take the interpreted nature of PHP out of the equation, and they will actually precompile the PHP code so that it'll execute faster. This is something that works well, but you're going to have to know what you're doing in terms of PHP and Linux management to get this working. Last, MySQL is a pretty efficient database. You can give it as much memory as it needs. There are some caching parameters that can be set, and if your blog has been running for more than a year, has a lot of comments and a lot of posts, you might want to defrag that database, and there are a variety of ways to do that, in essence, to rebuild the data structures and make it run faster. Last, when it comes to Linux, the way that you configure up a server, keep it simple. Just load on this what WordPress is going to need, and give it plenty of memory, and you should have a blog that's screaming fast. And when I say plenty of memory, anywhere from a gig of RAM to 4 gig of RAM will generally work to make a blog run fast. Okay, so now that we've done all that, what does this really mean for blog performance? And I'm actually going to share some results with you from Picture.com. This is a site that we've got that goes viral from time to time. I've got a couple of posts up here. One that we saw, over 130,000 visitors in a day, and you'll see some of the social media statistics that are related with that. 370 Facebook shares, almost 5,000 stumbles, 108 retweets, not that big, but 1,700 digs, and it put it on the front page of Dig, and traffic took off. The second one, and you'll notice that the dig bar down at the bottom has a 0. This is during the transition of digs, so that little plugin was not working properly. But we saw over 2,000 digs on a post. We saw over 2,000 Facebook shares, 6,000 stumbles, 210 tweets. And what we ended up netting out was 210,000 visitors or page views, in under 10 hours. And the server never faltered. In fact, performance was sub-second response to 2-second response when the traffic really got heavy. It was snappy, and I'll share with you what the resources look like. I had to shut off the visitor online midway through the process, so I didn't get to capture the full 2,500 users that we estimated hit concurrently Picture.com at one time. But we do show some stats here that we had when I took this, almost 2,000 concurrent users, and the max visitors of the day that were recorded were 2,270. Our average CPU usage load was 27%, which is starting to get up there, but it's definitely got headroom. There's plenty of room to keep moving on that. And our memory, at the time that I took this, we were only using about 10% of the RAM on the box. And you can see down here in terms of some of the more delicate resources, such as your secondary system parameter of priv pages. The soft limit on that is at 1.3 gig, and we were just around 147K in our current usage of that. So, and those are actually the units. Are 4 KB pages over to the right, so my math there is a little bit wrong. But back to the principle of what I was trying to say is we had plenty of headroom, because when those priv pages exhaust, that's when you'll generally watch a blog just crash. So that's what I've got to present today. Just some guidance and some direction on performance tuning for WordPress. If you're not a Unix admin or really comfortable in digging around in Linux and PHP, we do have a solution for you at HostCo. We actually provide small shared servers as well as virtual private dedicated servers that implement all of these techniques and more. We run Picture.com on HostCo, as well as a variety of other blogs that see high traffic, and we never reboot them. We just let them take the hits and keep rolling. So if you've got any questions, again, you can hit me at WP HostCo on Twitter, and we'll look forward to carrying on the dialogue.